Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of The Outer Worlds. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you chose to join me today as we talk to Clarence mostly about Gorgon. I kept my end of the bargain. I expect you to keep yours.
Lifting the emergency lockdown requires overrides from the Chem Lab and Human Inquiry. Access to those facilities requires authorizations from two senior-level researchers. Marion Blakesley, Jasper Lowe. They went into hiding after the project collapsed, but I've managed to calculate their last known whereabouts within a reasonable margin of error.
Calculated.
We keep all sorts of data on a permanent record. Spending habits, dietary restrictions, movement. Finding a person is no more complicated than solving an equation. After the project shut down, I had to keep my mind occupied. I worked on my actuarial tables, calculated the average lifespan of a spacer's choice worker, that sort of thing. I realized some of the researchers had to be alive. I ran some numbers, did a little research, and concluded that the two most likely survivors are Marion Blakesley and Jasper Lowe.
Well, I'll be damned if your statistics actually match up, because that's not how statistics work. At least that's not how they're applied. It seems like you haven't been able to let go of Project Gorgon either.
Nonsense. I just needed a good old-fashioned statistical problem to busy my mind. Keeps the faculties lubricated.
I don't want to... You talk about leaving the past behind, but you still feel responsible.
Let me stop you there. I don't accept anything for free. And if you're going to analyze me, I'd have to go through the trouble of hiring you on contract. Think what you will of my intentions, my calculations are sound. You'll find Marion Blakesley and Jasper Lowe at the enclosed locations.
So these two researchers are the only ones left?
As far as I know, Jasper Lowe and Marion Blakesley are the only two surviving researchers with high-level clearance. If you want to lift the lockdown on the manufactory, you'll need to send an override from the Chem Lab and Human Inquiry. I'm afraid it's the only way.
I need two different overrides to lift one lockdown. Why is nothing in this colony ever simple?
I know it feels like you're being led on. What is that colorful metaphor commoners use? A wild sprat chase? Remember, this is Spacer's Choice we're talking about. Their security protocols are just as inefficient and frustrating as their manufacturing.
All right, I've got some questions about these researchers.
I'll tell you what I can.
What do I need to know about Marion Blakesley?
Dr. Marion Blakesley supervised the Human Inquiry and Auditing Facility. Live subjects, measuring tape and syringes, that sort of thing. Someone sabotaged the facility. Blakesley tendered her resignation and vanished. I'm reasonably certain she's hiding in a maintenance bay on Groundbreaker.
Are you sure it was sabotage?
Well, with Spacer's Choice equipment, who even knows? Dr. Blakesley tendered her resignation lawfully, but under suspicious circumstances. If you want to know more, you'd best ask her yourself.
Yes. What about, Yeah, you're asking me to trust your hunch. That's true, but anyway, it's back to his, statistics thing, whatever. What about this Jasper Lowe guy?
Dr. Lowe described himself as a dazzling genius in his review. I disagreed. Of the 19 criteria that constitute the rubric of genius, Dr. Lowe only met 15. After the project shut down, corporate traded him off to Anti-Cleo in exchange for 5 lab coats. He's been transferred to an orbital lab around Olympus.
Really? Must have been some fancy lab coats.
Oh dear. How do I explain this without using too many syllables? Lab coats means scientists. It's a colloquial... It's slang. Let's get back on topic. You'll find Dr. Lowe in an orbital lab around Olympus.
Yes, I meant it's a freaking orbital lab. That is fancy and special and interesting. Before I go, there was one other thing.
Certainly. What's on your mind?
What can you tell me about Project Gorgon?
Let's try to keep it down, shall we? At least pretend we're being discreet? There's not a lot about Project Gorgon I can tell you. I know that's not what you wanted to hear, but I closed that chapter in my life. I've moved on.
I promise I'm not looking for any trouble. I just want information.
Look, don't tell anyone I said this. But if there's anything I've learned by living in Byzantium, it's this. If you go looking for the truth, you are looking for trouble. All right. Ask your questions. And then if you don't mind, don't mention Project Gorgon anywhere near me again.
Does the name Mini Ambrose mean anything to you?
Minnie Ambrose. Oh, Olivia's brat. Ambitious, but like the rest of her family, irrelevant. She tried following her mother's example, failed, and if she ever tried again, I couldn't tell you. The name Ambrose doesn't mean anything to me anymore, or to anyone halfway respectable. The Ambroses are, how do I put this politely, obsolete?
Yeah, we have learned about that, but tell me, what happened?
A family's name is only as strong as its enterprise. The Musgraves have Rizzos, and the Schylers have Auntie Cleo, and so we show those names the respect they deserve. The Ambrose name was associated with Project Gorgon. The project died, and so the Ambrose name died with it. That's just the way the game is played.
Why did Project Gorgon need an actuary?
Project Gorgon was designed to change the life of every worker on Halcyon. We weren't just building a product, we were trying to build a society. How many workers call Halcyon their home? What do they eat and when? How long do they sleep? How hard do they work? What are their most productive years? When do their organs begin to fail? That's the nature of my work. I study human life in order to determine its value. Jewelers appraise diamonds, and I appraise people.
Yeah. That is, yes. That is the subtext of what all that he has been saying about his actuary things. And that's that. Yeah. You can't break someone's life down into an equation. People aren't numbers. This is a I like this is a take on the application of statistics in this way. But and I want him to say that people are numbers, because you do need to think of people as numbers to have the misguided notion that statistics will help you, know what people are gonna do, or even the chances of what people are gonna do. The problem is that when you are applying statistics like this, it's never about. It never works. It never works. How should I put this? It always work. Statistics work retroactively. No, I'm not a statistician myself. I didn't major in anything related to statistics. But so this is just common knowledge that I have. But statistics don't work for the future. It's. Did I mention that thing? Was it in this Let's Play, or was it in another Let's Play? I think it might have been in this one where most people die in a bed, so you can't say that the most dangerous place to be is a bed, because that's where most people die. The thing is, what statistics do is they disprove, or potentially disprove, theories. And in the sense that they might never prove theories, because proving something is not scientific. You always disprove something, and if statistics don't disprove something, then you're probably correct. That's how science works. It's the being probably correct. But the way they disprove something is if you analyze data from the past, not data from the future. And the reason why, or I think, to put it in a better way, the most intuitive, you can think about it in an intuitive way, which is the situation with a bed. But I think there's a better way of explaining that, at least a more relevant and more useful way of understanding the intuitiveness of statistics not working for predictions, at least not in this manner. And the thing is, they do work for predictions in some aspects, but they're not trustworthy, they're not scientific, and certainly they're not fair. And that's what the game is telling us here, because obviously he's the incarnation of unfairness, as well as the rest of Byzantium. But the thing is, sorry, move the microphone there. The thing is, imagine you're hiring workers. So, in the modern day, at the time of recording anyway, statistics are very important for hiring, and they're assuming even more and more importance, and data in general. They're assuming more and more importance in the hiring process for certainly for big corporations, maybe not so much for smaller corporations, because the hiring process itself is costly. So, smaller corporations just go with whatever. And I say corporations, I mean smaller companies and whatnot. So it depends on where you're applying as a worker. But the thing is, imagine you have a strong correlation. The word correlation is very important to understand what it means, but it doesn't matter for here. You have a strong correlation between people who are very tall and people who, I don't know, operate lifters very nicely. They're tall people operate lifters better, and for an early triage, so that you can, have the most qualified lift. What did I call it? Lift. Forklifts. That's what I'm talking about. Forklift operator. That's the one. So they could have the most qualified forklift operators. You're gonna say that anybody below a certain height is not gonna. It's not gonna. It's not gonna. You're not even gonna consider them, because they are not gonna be the best. So you're looking for the best forklift operator, and let's say 6 feet. Anybody below 6 feet doesn't count. And of course, you have a universe of like thousands of people that are applying for that job. It's only one job. You're gonna get like 10 or 20 or whatever, however many 6 feet people that are gonna be there. The problem with this is that there are other possible correlations that you're not taking into account into operating the forklift. And of course, intuitively, what does height have to do with forklift operating? This is just an example. It doesn't matter what the factor is. It could be who plays the most video games. In fact, that probably has a better correlation for forklift operators, but I have never operated a forklift, so I have no idea if it correlates or not, or if it would intuitively correlate. The thing is, when you're basing your picking aspect off of a single aspect point, or the height in this case, you're gonna cut out a lot of potential employees that would be better, because while the correlation may be strong, and when we're talking about statistics, we're talking about mathematics, in the sense that what does it mean to be a strong correlation? I actually don't know. There's probably a certain term, or there's probably a certain value. But imagine if it's like, because there's something called a p-value. And I think it has to do with statistics rather than necessarily with margin of error. But I'm not sure. It might be margin of error, because I'm thinking about it. Anyway, the p-value doesn't matter. The point is, imagine that 70% of the best... The way... How did you know? How do you know that the height is correlated to be operating a forklift? Nice. Well, 70% of the best he's really bored with my rambles. Imagine 70% of the best forklift operators are very tall. And this is replicable in different circumstances. You go to different companies and you check it, and yeah, that checks out. 70%, 80%. There's a correlation there. You don't know why it is, because, statistics don't explain why. Correlation doesn't mean causation. That's another very important thing. And what that means is that just because, two things are correlated, like the bed and the dying, they are definitely correlated. It doesn't mean that the bed itself causes the death, and that's why correlation doesn't mean causation. But it doesn't matter for statistics, and that's the fault. That's the problem. Why it's immoral at the end of the day, but also why it's wrong and it's not scientific. It's because you're jumping to conclusions. But sometimes jumping to conclusions works, like in this case. But the problem here that I'm trying to point out is that the 30% of other very well specialized operators that are not tall, they're good forklift operators for other reasons that you didn't take into account for your survey. So what happens is, what if in this in this idea of let's say 1,000 people applied, and you got only the tallest people, and imagine all of them are going to be tall, right? But imagine that of the 1,000 people that applied, only 30%, only 30% were tall, in the sense that were even tall, in the sense that they were, because this is of course we're like, we're applying for a job, we're just thinking of the best ones, right? But only 30% of the 1,000 people that applied are actually tall, and the rest are all short. You're necessarily limiting your picking aspect from something that is not the vast majority of people. So what happens is that if the talent is correlated to other things as well, which it is, because being tall doesn't have anything to do with operating a forklift, but I'm just trying to make it intuitive. What happens is that the other correlations are going to be significantly destroyed, unless those correlations themselves are correlated to being tall, which they probably are not. But the thing is, like, what about those 70%? They could be, video game players. They could be surgeons or whatever. I don't know what makes a good forklift operator. The point is, you're reducing your sample by such a huge margin, or you can reduce your sample by such a huge margin, that it effectively makes your sampling process meaningless. And you can try this in statistical models, and there's like calculations that you can do, like multiplications of all this sort of stuff. There's videos that explain all this stuff way better than I can. But that's the complicated aspect of this, is that the implications of aiming for a statistical ideal, the implications of that is that you are not really narrowing down on the ideal. You're just erasing the ones that don't conform to your statistical model. So what this means in the case of being tall is that if you don't sample for other things, you're going to be disadvantaging people. Of course, you're disadvantaging, in this case of the forklift operating, of course you're going to be disadvantaging people who are not tall, but that's, they're not tall, it doesn't matter. It's the thing that we're observing. That's your intention, is to make short people not be able to operate forklift operators. But you're also going to inadvertently, or at least not by design, be disadvantaging people who may be, for example, women, for example, not since we're talking about height. You didn't account for gender, but because statistically speaking, women are shorter than men, you're going to be disadvantaging them. And you're probably going to have also other things correlated to that, like ethnicity or just how, there's other things that are correlated to height. But whatever it is you're going to have the side effects that are not intended, and those can have moral consequences, obviously, but they can also have and they definitely do have very practical consequences, where the result is meaningless. It's because it's not about I've been rambling about this because the point is, statistics for prediction are only as useful as your how should I put this? They're only as useful as your your categories that you write down. You know what I mean? Think about phrenology, for example. Phrenology is an interesting example of just super wrong statistics. Phrenology, if you don't know what it is, it's related to eugenics, historically speaking, anyway. It doesn't have to be, if we're talking just what it is. Phrenology is the study of the cranium, as in relation to socially established notions of intelligence and culture and education. So that's basically what phrenology is, and that's basically people measuring people's heads and going, people with this bone here being a little bit bigger, they tend to be smarter. And that's a good example of correlation is not causation, because they will, well, in that case they will find some correlations, because of course we're talking. Phrenology was very popular at the beginning of the 20th century, and there's a lot of racial divides that would cause a lot of these correlations. In an ideal world, those correlations wouldn't exist. So if you did find some statistically relevant differences between the size of bones or whatever, and intelligence and culture, then it would be by just normal randomness, because that sometimes happens with statistics. Sometimes you see patterns and they don't really exist, and the correlation is really just, it just doesn't matter. But phrenology is a good example of people picking things that don't matter, the bones, instead of looking at things that do matter, like, you know, how oppressed is your people, how much money did you grow up with, how many chances were you given for employment, what is your education like, all that sort of stuff. Those are the relevant things. And yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know, I ramble about a lot of stuff. The good thing about my rambles is that you can see when I move. You can just hover over the scroll, the thing on YouTube and see, oh, he skipped the dialogue. That's good. I am here for the dialogue, not for his theories on what the dialogue means. Because you can also come to your own conclusions. You don't need to hear my conclusions about the dialogue of the game. Although, that's how I engage with the game, is by talking about it. But it is also to preface what I'm about to choose here. You can't break someone's life down into an equation, because this doesn't matter. You technically can. It's just, that's not the limitation of statistics, is that even though you technically can, it doesn't mean you will. And in fact, it means that if you don't do that ideally correct, or like if your breaking down of the equation isn't perfect, you will be doing something wrong and something bad. So either you are spot on or you're just wrong. And that's the problem. Because technically you can, and it still doesn't work for a prediction in the future, but you can. I mean, people aren't numbers, I'm going to say. Let's hear him say that they are.
Of course you can.
There we go.
You can break the entire universe down into numbers and statistics. Human beings are as much a part of the universe as weather patterns and orbital mechanics.
That's a good example that you say that. Because statistics are, in the universe, there's also anomalies every time. Think about the size of black holes, for example. And you look at statistics and you're like, look at that. There's a lot of small black holes and there's a lot of big black holes. Where were the ones in the middle? And we find a few here and there, but, you know, they're not statistically relevant. But they still exist. Anyway, you must have left Gorgon for a reason. What happened?
It's complicated. I'll be honest, I didn't join Project Gorgon because I wanted to satisfy my intellectual curiosity. I was courting the daughter of a Spacer's Choice family. We were a mathematically congruent match, you see. I had the proofs all written out and everything.
You matched on Tinder. Just don't make it weird. I see where this is going. What exactly went wrong?
Everything. Every project has a margin of failure. We expect setbacks, complications, delays. Project Gorgon experienced a cascade failure. One mistake precipitated another, and another, and another. The labs failed to develop a safe drug. Human Inquiry failed to perform their tests responsibly. An unsafe drug tested on unhealthy subjects by irresponsible supervisors. That's Project Gorgon.
That is Project Gorgon, but your hands aren't clean, Clarence. You were part of Project Gorgon as well.
I know. Project Gorgon was a failure of leadership. Leadership to which I belonged. I should have pushed for stricter supervision. We gave the other departments too much freedom and not enough oversight. Spare the rod, spoil the servant.
I don't think that's where the game is going with the Project Gorgon storyline. A failure of leadership. But it isn't necessarily a bad take for him to say that. I think it is a failure of leadership, but more so in the sense that the goals were wrong. The goals are always wrong. That's the problem, because their goals is making money, make all the money. So that means that, some things have to be sacrificed for making all the money. One of the sacrifices, for example, is giving all of that money to your workers. You're not going to do that, so you need to sacrifice that bit. Don't give all the money to your workers. You need to make sacrifices, and sometimes those sacrifices are what we have seen already in the project in Gorgon, in the the little texts and all that, which is them slashing deadlines and all that sort of stuff. So while it is a failure of leadership, it's also the failure of their priorities as a company itself, because it sort of connects with Spacer's Choice motto, really, at the end of the day. But it's not any less applicable to the rest of the game and the rest of the companies. Let's see what we have over here for that. So the project fell apart and your test subjects became marauders.
Anarchy is not a crime. It is a symptom. The undisciplined workplace secretes anarchy the way our glands secrete enzymes. It's a principle of science. Sabotage came first. The chem lab, human inquiry, even my own office. Sabotage broke the discipline of our workplace, leading to confusion, leading to escaped subjects, leading to anarchy.
That's the second time the game specifically mentions sabotage. The first place was in texts. So that makes me think that this is actually the case. His explanation for it is bollocks, but I think maybe that's true. No, it's not the second time, it's the third time the game mentions sabotage. The staff are all dead or missing. You're the only one wearing a tracker.
No one appreciates the value of good data. The holistic surveillance device I wear is an invaluable tool, gathering data on all my day-to-day activities. My former colleagues can go into hiding and live in ignorance for all I care. I prefer the self-examined life.
Okay, no more questions. Thanks for your time. Well, well, well. Who knew? Sabotage might have been what happened in Gorgon, after all. I wonder if that's related to... Well, I was going to say correlated. I wonder if that's related to Olivia Ambrose. Anyway, we're going to get out of here because we're going to kill some of the UDL. I think it's UDL outside. Some of the UDL people outside. But that's going to be next episode. For right now, I'm Colonel RPG, and this has been Outer Worlds. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and if you did, go ahead and leave a comment, like the video if you want to see the next episode come out sooner rather than later, but above all, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.